Oh.
And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, fuck him.
Right. Attention to roll call, people.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern time. Of course, 5:05 Pacific time, coast to coast. Surprisingly, it's actually raining out here in LA. I haven't seen rain in a long time, especially with all these fires out here. We could use it. So since I've been in California, I think I've seen rain about 3 or 4 times in almost a year. So something on the bright side. But here we go. We got your Friday roundtable. This is Defiance Unfiltered Constat Week 6. That's not Comstat. That's Constat. So this is great. I think everything's starting to weave in together. Yesterday we did an episode where we spoke about crime down January 2025 compared to 2024, the year before for January. I think we laid out the actual reasons. A lot of it, I used to always tell my cops in the street, the best cop on duty is Officer Rain. So the environment does play a big part in the weather sometimes when it comes to crime stats, especially extreme frigid weathers and, of course, hot outside. So let's get right into it. What else weaves right into this? So sure enough, Defiance Unfiltered, we beat the news again. We spoke about yesterday on the podcast, in the episode, we spoke about 250s. Our old school cops know what 250s are, right? That was the form for stop reports. Now it's called stop reports, when you actually engage someone to stop, question, and possibly frisk. So, of course, it's a double-sided coin, as Jessica Tisch is now implementing intrusive police work with Q teams, which means quality life adjustment. At the same token, backhanding these cops and disciplining them for not doing it properly. So, John, let's bring around the round table. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's more of the same. It's more of the Eric Adams smoke and mirrors. It's bringing back conditions teams, right? The CRT team was supposed to replace the anti-crime team, and they did a miserable job of that. They didn't even come close to replacing the anti-crime teams. So, but that was what the CR team was ultimately supposed to be. And they said they were going to have a heavy focus on quality of life enforcement and getting guns off of the street. And so now here we are 3 years into Eric Adams' administration, 4 police commissioners later. And now we have the Q teams, which are a reinvention of NYPD condition teams. They're teams that are based out of the precinct, few officers that are very well aware of where the crimes are going. They know this because they focus and zero in on the crime zones, something that Jessica Tisch is pretending that has been recently invented through use of her new computer and technology system, which is laughable because every cop from 1970 up knows exactly what a crime zone is. We know exactly what being in the crime zone means. We were trained, especially us who came out in the impact era, we were trained to be in the zone, right? You would get in trouble if you weren't in the zone. You were meant to be in the zone. Enforcement was taken in the zone. You weren't going to write grandma down the block who was on her cell phone. You were going to enforce law, whatever it was, whether it be minor or major, on people who are partaking in crime, actual crime, the people that we believe are partaking in the major crime. And we were doing broken window theory enforcement. And now here we go, pretending that we're going to do broken window theory with these Q teams, broken windows theory policing with these Q teams under this progressive spin of New York City and the anti-police mayor, the mayor who has declared New York City a racist organization that hones in on Black and brown people and targets them. So I'm not buying it. It's just more of the same. It's smoke and mirrors. What do you think, Sal?
I think the article, when I first read it, it says, wait, where have I seen this before? I wasn't I hearing this yesterday? It's like they took a page right out of your book. And again, the whole stop, question, and frisk era, which was the impact era, we're still in New York City. You are still facing the litigation factor in that, where that's ongoing, which is why I said just the last week, the return to this Q stat, which is really conditions, IRT, all this stuff. you're rolling back in time, and then you're trying to reinvent the wheel, and use these words like AI, and these are stuff. This is again stuff that Jack Maple brought to the table, and as good as that might have worked or didn't work at that time, you want to be reinvent things, and you want to be innovative and evolve. And the police department instead has gone back to listening to the cronies that brought out, I think, the worst in that. That's the problem. I think this has been used. It's being used in the wrong way. The impact zone stuff, there was a lot of stuff that happened that was negative there. And that's what I think they're focusing on yet again. And, the way now they're going to discipline. See, now if you start disciplining people, they didn't fill this out right or that. Now what you're saying is, now we're going to also be wary of you if you punish someone for being proactive. So again, you're going to have that in the back. Someone who's being proactive now in the back of their head is going to say, I forgot. I didn't put my camera on. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And we were trained in a certain way. So now you're trying to tell these newer cops that came out of the academy, very recently, maybe a couple of years ago, in now a different era, that they have to police the way we did, but under these new rules, where these rules now today and the way legislation is doesn't favor you. It doesn't favor this stuff. It's really against you doing all this stuff. So I think you're going to see more cops be disciplined, or even the ones, you got to be careful, ones that just make a mistake not knowing, because they're not used to this stuff. So, it's just a different world and a different era. And I think the article kind of explains it. And I can't believe the union head, I think he's watching the show and he listened to what you, John, and everybody you said, and he quoted exactly what you're saying. So I thought that was hilarious.
Marlon, what do you got, bro?
All right. Morning, everyone. I got a new mic today, so hopefully I don't sound like I'm a scuba diver here. But that there's a lot to dissect in that article. What struck me most though was her talk about discipline, and that basically the discipline and supervision were lacking when she talks about the failure to properly document stops, and she talks about how it undermines integrity and basically the same stuff that we've been talking about for like months. Okay, to me, what this seems like is maybe I'm being a little cynical, but it seems like they're preparing the rug pull for those cops who were aggressive under Chell, Marjorie, and Kaz. And if that's the case, I wonder who exactly are they going to find for these new Q teams? Because it almost seems like we have two different departments at the same time now, especially since the same guy who was pushing cops to be more aggressive and to be cowboys got the bump up, and he's now chief of department. So I'm hoping that maybe Tish kind of passed along that memo to Chell as well, because it's kind of odd that we're talking about discipline and at the same time rewarding the guy who kind of pushed a lot of these rookies to be so aggressive in the first place. So, which kind of guidelines do we want to set here? What kind of message are we trying to send here? So that's my initial thoughts on it. But like I said, there's a lot to dissect in this article that we'll go through as we come around the round table again.
Coffee and donuts to Tom Joyce. Tom Joyce, what a hell of an interview. He did a great job. $50 says good morning and happy Friday. Good morning to you. I think it was really a memorable interview. It was outstanding. Tom Joyce, his experiences. John and I were talking about it. We were super impressed. His ability to pay attention to detail shows he definitely should have been a detective squad. And of course, cold case. You ask Tom Joyce a question, he would give you a story and really relate it to the question and then go back to the question, answer it. So, Tom, your ability to pay attention to detail was super impressive. Sleepy Joe, shout out to you, 1061. It says, after After this, have the finest Unfiltered report to Borough Stat, Spike Stat, Dom Stat, U Stat, Graffiti Stat, Crew Stat, and another Com Stat for another 28 days, because why not? That's a great point.
Q Stat too. Q
Stat. Now, Q Stat, Chalk Stat. There was a TRI stat, 4 stat. You know what's interesting? There's a stat for everything on this job. And I tell you what, it really fits Jessica Tisch. She claims that she's data-driven. And the NYPD loves data. And the reason why the NYPD, this is our active retired members have a great perspicacious mindset for this. But for anyone for outside law enforcement or any of our, civilians out there or family of police, the reason why they love stats and a stat for everything is so those stats could actually be manipulated. Right. And that's the reason why. It's because there's semantics. And when it comes to statistics, you can manipulate everything. And again, I think it's backhanded. Marlon, I think you bring up a great point. That has come to my mind. I thought about that. It's very possible that this could be the pathway to protect the cops in the khaki pants. Because the cops in the khaki pants, they're there by nepotism. I've spoken to numerous cops there that the majority of them there have some type of what we refer to as a hook. And when we say a hook, that means they have a connection. That connection is a form of nepotism. So when it comes to that form of nepotism, it's possible that I do believe that at some point that unit will be disbanded. And it's possible they'll start segueing those cops into detective squads. And these Q teams will be your new khaki pants without the preferential treatment. And what they'll do is they'll drop the hammer on these guys, right? They'll save these guys' careers with the khaki pants because they know it's getting to the point now with the amount of oversight that their careers will get peppered up. But the new guys, they're part of the new cycle where if they go out and do this intrusive police work, and if they actually target the proper subjects, they will become political targets by an overzealous civilian complaint review board. There'll be no support from the police department. Of course, the eyes will also come from Alvin Bragg and the other DA officers. So they'll be in a lot of trouble. These cops, their careers are going to get peppered up. At some point, I won't be the most complaint cop anymore. They'll far surpass me. So that's why I said this is a complete double-sided coin. We're sending the cops out there. Let's do intrusive police work. But we're saying that if they're not doing it properly, that's a lack of integrity. And I say the reality is that's not necessarily a lack of integrity. It's a lack of training. And if they're going out and they're doing the stops improperly, it's because that's a failure on the leadership of the NYPD. They have not been properly trained. And it makes sense. The veterans of the police department are gone. They're retired or they're retiring as we speak. And the cops that are on the job right now, most of them come from the de Blasio area, and they segued into working under Adams 2.0, which is even worse. So they don't have the tools. They have this community policing mindset, which really was ineffective because the cops didn't learn how to be cops. And now we're sending them out there to do intrusive police work when they don't know how to do it, and they're under the microscope, and it's only going to lead to mistakes and errors. And instead of properly training them, they're going to face discipline. John, I think that this is completely irresponsible. I think that these cops are facing a lot of trouble, and obviously they're not going to be able to address the persons of interest that actually have impact on crime, because if they do, say goodbye to your career. CCRB, civil litigation.
Yeah, so I said when we did the last podcast, I think that this is the end of CRT. I think we're all saying the same thing. This is the end of CRT, but I don't agree that they're going to be the ones to be on the Q team. I personally see a huge exodus within the police department, and they're going to have to start to address this. You know what? We're dinosaurs now when we shouldn't be. We should be in middle management at this point, like in the rookies and the executive ranks at this point. But none of us are, because the police department felt the need to just get new people in, and that's how they were going to backfill all the talent and all the experience that they lost. Right. So now thousands and thousands of people just like us are gone out of the New York City Police Department. So under this mayoral administration, only in 3 years, we've seen more cops leave, retire, full vested retirement. We've had more cops retire early. We've had more cops resign early. We've had more cops terminated than any other point in New York City history. Right. So now what we're seeing is they're trying to backfill all of these people. The problem is every academy class, you lose about 10 to 15% of those people by the time they graduate the academy, and then even some more after that. Those numbers have increased. So what I think is going to happen, and I'm just gonna, and nobody has given me this info. I'm just seeing and watching this. So if you're listening to this, Tish, I didn't speak anybody in your office. I just see the play, and I know what's happening. So I think what they're gonna do is take these Q teams and take the same failed policy that Shell and Kaz implemented when they put these young rookies into CRT. CRT guys, they're done already. They ruined their careers already. It's over. They're peppered up. Some of them are going to get indicted. They'll cycle the ones that they like the best into detective squads and into other units. They'll let them go where they want. They're not going on those Q teams. They're going to take rookies again to continue to attract them to stay on this job. Yeah, give them an hour up front to play Xbox 360 or PlayStation. Let them work out for another hour and then go out and hammer the community and get us numbers. And they're going to dirty them up the same way they dirtied the CRT team up. They're going to be, again, young, inexperienced rookies running around playing Dukes of Hazzards on the streets of New York City, maybe without the chases this time because they're bringing down the chases, but they're really going to push them for numbers. And at the same time, they're pushing them for numbers. Yeah, you know, Arcade, sorry, you didn't put your body camera on, CD. You didn't document it properly, CD. So it's broken windows theory under a complete anti-police progressive regime. And I don't know how anybody in policing supports Eric Adams. I mean, I've watched clip after clip of this guy for years, for 2 decades, and even till today. And the things that he says, he diminishes all of you. He diminishes all of your career. He says it over and over and over again, that the NYPD targeted Black and brown communities. It's a complete, utter lie. And yet nobody calls him out on it. You have people like Bratton and Kelly not saying a word, even though he demonized them to get elected. And now that he's elected, when we look at the stops that are happening, they're so much worse than what happened under the Giuliani or the Bloomberg era or the de Blasio era. The stops are bad stops. Why are the stops bad stops? Because you put inexperienced rookies who are being led in the field by low integrity supervisors who are also inexperienced, who probably also shouldn't have a gun and shield because of the things they did in their career. But this is who they targeted for the CRT. And I'm pretty sure that's who they're going to target it for these Q teams. They're not going for the experienced guy in the sector car. They're not going for the guy with 3 years on. They're going to go for the rookie. That's what I see. That's what I think. I have zero. I didn't talk to one person about this. Just I'm watching it and I'm just seeing what they do. And what they do is they just use the same model over and over again and change the name. What do you think, Sal? Who do you think is going to fill the Q teams?
Well, knowing John Schell, if John Schell has any say in this, which he probably does, he likes young, impressionable police officers, people that just came out of academy 1 or 2 years on, they're fresh, they're all rah, 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 and then he'll bring you in, and then you'll be doing what you see today. You know, the car chases, the let's stop 20 guys on a corner. Whether it's constitutional or not, he keeps pushing for it behind the scenes. When things go wrong, or if things go wrong, he will be the first one to say, well, what does your training tell you to do, officer? Because he can't say that I push you to do it, but he's trying to get as much as he can out of you so that he looks good and that he has something to say at these meetings. ComStat, traffic stat, whatever stat they're making up. But again, right now, we know for sure that they're using this broken windows theory and this Q stat initiative in transit, where they're literally locking up the guy that's fallen on hard times and fell asleep on a bench. That homeless guy is being arrested for numbers and getting declined prosecution afterward. And whether or not it's an officer that's overzealous or wants to be active, he's being told to do this. And they're being told to do this at the highest levels. So again, this whole initiative, this whole Q-Stat thing, I keep going back to, we're going back to the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, an era where, yeah, we brought crime down and all that, but it came at a cost. And they're taking that cost and making that the priority. That's because they don't know that they don't have any ideas. They don't have anything that could be innovative or evolve. Even Kaz Daughtry, who, by the way, has anyone seen Kaz Daughtry in the last week? All his ideas are drones, and it's all stuff that was technology, stuff that Jack Maple brought first and mentioned first. And the police department was utilizing these things in that era. It was just called a different, it wasn't called AI, it wasn't called drone. But the Argus cameras, all this stuff was the brainchild of Jack Maple, and then Bill Bratton used it and said, oh, it was on me. And now they're just applying it to today's world. But again, like you said, John, with the progressive-led city council and progressive-led legislation, this doesn't favor someone who's active in the street. And there's one thing I can't stand is watching the one good cop or the group of cops that are good doing their job, and they're going to get crushed in discipline. As you know, if you watch my own show, I've shown you a few instances of a couple of road cops that took it way too far, but through cronyism and nepotism have not been terminated yet. And when discipline is laid out, they're treated differently than the common cop who will go out and stop someone, try to do the right thing, but he has white socks on, he gets charges and specs, and he might get terminated for it. That's what I'm talking about. So I wouldn't advise a cop today, in today's world, to be on this Q team or the CRT team. I would wait years and years and years to get experience to find out first the layer of the land. So what do the politicians want? Well, first you want to know what the public wants. Then how does the politician, what are they doing to answer for the demand from the public? And then you move forward. You no longer, as a police officer, and I did this, you go forward and go, I know what's the right thing to do. I should stop this guy. But you have to think, what if I stop this guy and then they're going to say I did X, Y, Z, or there's one crazy claim? Your career is over. They'll destroy you, because if you're not tied back to cronyism and nepotism ties, you're done. You're going to be destroyed, which is something that's happened throughout the years. So again, the idea, if you were saying let's take the best out of the broken windows theory, then I would be all for it. But again, they're using the worst elements of it, because again, here they go applying it to every single homeless person they see in transit, and not every single one of them is a problem. Some of them are, not all of them, but again, you're hearing this. And there's a lot of declined prosecutions, which would mean there will be future litigation. There's going to be future discipline matters. Why? And why would they do that? Oh, it's because John Schell and Eric Adams and company think it's a great idea. And that's not right.
Mal, what do you think? Who are they gonna fill these Q teams with?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you guys. I think this is how the job works now. This is the cycle. You get young guys in there, the young guys get dirtied up, and then you cycle through. You get the fresh guys in there. Neither of them get trained by experienced cops, and this just adds to the continual hemorrhaging of the job of cops in general. This city is kind of funny, because being a cop in the city, you're sandwiched in between both the higher ups who push for you to be aggressive, and between lawmakers who are pushing aggressive, progressive legislation as well. So on one hand, you have the diaphragm law, you have bail reform, you have discovery, all that. You have the job zone of reforms to stop and frisk, and that new measure where you have to document anybody that you come in contact with. I haven't been following up on that one to see if they've actually made some common sense adjustments to it. But in all cases, it's unreasonable. And a lot of these measures, you go to departments in other states, you go to a department in Florida and you talk about it, and they're looking at you like you're insane for having to police under all these tight measures, But at the same time, right, So in New York City, you as that aggressive cop trying to do your job, you're sandwiched in between that. The job wants you to be aggressive, doesn't protect you when you make a mistake, and doesn't speak up against, doesn't really push back against those wacky progressive measures. So so naturally the outcome of all of this is going to be an environment where it's only the young guys, the young inexperienced rookies that just come out of the academy with full of like fire, that guys like Chell and Kaz can get into these units, because they're the only ones who don't understand how this works yet. So they're gonna continually get themselves in trouble, and then by that time they understand how the job works. So we gotta get even younger guys now, and this is how you end up with 2-year cops in crime, and 2-year cops who really haven't done any time on patrol. And let me tell you, you really cut your teeth in patrol. You really learn how to talk to people, how to maneuver in the neighborhood, where the problems are. You really cut your teeth there. So when you put inexperienced cops directly into crime, you're skipping a whole learning experience there. So by the time they get to crime, they can't approach it with a kind of measured response that a guy who's spent time on patrol, who's really learned the neighborhood, and who's built experience can. So yeah, this is the way the NYPD is now. It's a cycle, and unfortunately, it's gonna get worse. Like I said before.
There's no doubt about it. There's a cycle where cops are pretty much used and abused. And John and I spoke about this numerous times throughout our 2.5 years doing podcasting, that it's pretty much understood, accepted, acknowledged that there are cops in the NYPD that are going to be casualties. And it's almost like to the point where John and I said to ourselves, John, if you remember, I remember we said, there must be some type of percentage or a number they have in their head. Like, you know what? There's going to be 1,000 casualties this year. Meaning there'll be 1,000 cops where their careers are getting peppered up, getting stained by the CCRB, and that eventually those cops will get leprosy, and no longer will they be useful and be working in the street anymore for the same work that they were paid and trained to do. And what I find extremely problematic about this, why is the implementation of this memorandum immediately referred to as discipline? Why is it not a training tool? Why is the leadership of the NYPD? This is where I have a problem with predecessors and this administration even further. Obviously, because of the appearance of impropriety and the potential corruption at the top of the upper echelon. But why is this not used as a training tool? That's what these supervisors should be doing. That should be the directive by Jessica Tisch to stem through the department. Watch these body cameras to encourage the police officers, mentor them, teach them, observe these body cameras, observe their interactions, and give them advice on how to do the police work, especially intrusive, and how to do it better. But you know what's great about it? They couldn't do that because they don't know how to do it themselves. The upper echelon is not comprised of personnel that did intrusive police work themselves. Kaz Daughtry was a chauffeur his entire career. I've heard he's had a lot of arrests. But were those arrests intrusive on his own, or were they given to him? Is the upper echelon, have they experienced doing intrusive police work themselves? Has the majority of the police department done intrusive police work in the past 11 years? Absolutely not. So right away, we impose discipline, and yet Jeffrey Madry, where discipline should be imposed, it didn't happen. Tiny Kinsella, the first deputy commissioner, where discipline should be imposed, it didn't happen. John Shell, where discipline should be imposed for being unprofessional, having pissing matches on social media, for actually implementing a crime-fighting strategy such as vehicle pursuits, which is only emanated in damage, injury, and death. There's no discipline there. No discipline for Kaz Daughtry for his unprofessionalism, for him having lacking integrity, pleading guilty, and yet moving up the chain and getting promoted by rocket fuel. Tariq Shepard for pushing and shoving the former police commissioner, interim commissioner Tom Donlin. No discipline. But yet the police officers you now send out to do intrusive police work to make public safety better, to bring crime down, not just perception, but the reality of crime, we're going to impose discipline. And then we're going to say, why is morale down? Why are we lacking camaraderie? Why are we having a recruitment problem? Why are cops retiring? Well, because you administer these policies that have led the general population to want to leave. So, John, I agree with you. I think we all said the same thing. Marlon, Sal, that the khaki pants, the majority of them, have some type of form of nepotism, and their careers may be saved. They'll try to get them to a detective squad. Some of them, unfortunately, will probably get snagged by some DA's office or maybe the attorney general when it comes to these vehicle pursuits. And some of them may get snagged by CCRB when this blanket protection and this administration changes over, and no longer do they have those amenities afforded to them. But I do think it's exactly what we've all said. It's a cycle. They take a group of cops, they send them out there to do intrusive police work, and then they smack them around, their careers get peppered up, and then they throw them away, and they bring in new cops. I know. I was the most complained cop. I was out there doing the work paid and trained to do, as the police department taught me, and how I mentored my cops to do intrusive police work. And with my experience, I was peppered up from an overzealous CCRB. So if the target gets on you, that's where your career is going. And that stain stays for life. I will always have, unless the 58 changes, that will always be there. I'll be a 75-year-old man, and I'll still be the most complained cop. So if you're an active cop out there, think about it right now. When they send you out there to do this intrusive police work, are they giving you the pathway to get to the detective squad? Will you get somewhere on merit? Will you be Harrison's daughter? I think not. Rich Rod, shout out to you. Coffee and donuts, $20. Good morning, John, Eric, everyone. Thank you so much. John, this has to stop. This cycle has to stop. And hopefully we can do it. I think this is the best quote so far I saw by Pat Hendry. And this particular article that was actually written after we spoke about it, if I could get it. But basically, Pat Hendry refers to the fact that sending the cops out there to do this kind of work is going to create problems for these cops. That's exactly what we're saying.
Yeah, so, I mean, it is what it is. Listen, that memorandum is 100% coming down from, that's the Ray Kelly style of supervision, where there's going to be zero tolerance. We're going to hammer you, so you're going to do the right thing. And I got to be honest, I kind of like that style of supervision because it keeps people in line, especially when we see a police department that's completely out of control, where, you know, we got the Ask for Cash program, you know, you got the family and friends confidential rental leasing program, where, you know, your wife could get a car, your girlfriend could get a car, your cousin could get a car, your buddy on the block could get a car. So when you're watching all these things, you could pay for your promotion, you could get a discretionary promotion. We could rig the civil service tests. We could make sure that you didn't pass, but you actually passed. When we see all these things happening, I understand like the no tolerance of it. I understand it, but it can't be done in this department. You're just coming in heavy-handed. You could do that in the Ray Kelly era when people were like, you know what, I'm going to retire in 25 years. When guys were like, yeah, I get hammered for all this little stuff, but it's a great job. I love going to work. It is what it is. You're going to take a couple of vacation days from me? I don't care. I don't take them anyway. I like going to work. This is not that department anymore. Ray Kelly was a great manager in his time. Ray Kelly had the blessing of working for great mayors. Bill Bratton had the blessing of working for a great mayor, and then he obviously couldn't work under the progressive spin under de Blasio, and he ran out, right? He ran away, never told us why. And so, but that's what's happening. That's what you're watching. You're watching, you know, Marlon put a post out the other day, and it was Jessica Tisch, but it was Ray Kelly's face, and it was hysterical. And that's exactly what all this is. And listen, Ray Kelly's, when you look at guys like Ray Kelly, Bill Bratton, you can't diminish their careers. They're geniuses when it comes to policing. They're legends in the world of policing, but their time has passed. They do not understand what's happening in this department. There's a mass exodus happening. The media has been complicit for the last 3 years in reporting this. How many more police podcasts have to come out? How many more retired guys have to come out before you're like, wow, all of these young guys are retired? Why? I'd like to ask you the same question. Why? because they're being pushed out, they're being forced out. This is at the same time they're telling you they want to attract and retain cops and they want to bring down crime. They're also not telling you, but you're watching police officers get mentally and physically diminished under these policies. They're being held to impossible standards. The other thing that came out this week is they were touting crime being down as a success. They were touting January, which was a very frigid, cold month. And historically, it's always a cold month. Historically, crime usually drops around January. There was a significant drop, however, this January in overall crime in New York City, as well as in transit crime. Sal, what do you attribute that crime drop to? Was it anything that the police department did that you could attribute that to?
Well, actually, I'd like to point this fact out. I worked in Coney Island, and actually, we had the same issues, the 28-day period. And right after September, October, November, things would usually slide down crime-wise. Why? Because the weather gets colder. But you would see a rise in, domestic disputes because now everybody's inside their homes and they're not outside anymore. So, and the upswing would be when the weather gets good. Obviously, everybody's outside and, that cycle happens again. But it wasn't at the levels that you see today. But as far as the crime going down in January, I mean, you have this whole initiative where they're like I said, they're arresting anyone they see in transit. They've been told to do basically almost unconstitutional stops in transit to appease the governor and the mayor and whoever else is part of this initiative. It's wrong, and unfortunately, will they ever be held accountable for making this order? Meaning Kathy Hochul, Adams, and all these other people in NYPD. I highly doubt it. They'll always come down on the cop who was told to do so. That's how it always goes, unfortunately. But that in itself was a good push in January. And the crime is down because you're running around locking up anyone and everyone you see. That has a lot of negatives to it. Yeah, again, but that's kind of one aspect of it. The other one is, you're right. It was very frigid, very cold temperatures. So are people outside? I know it's definitely not. It's definitely not. July in New York City where everyone is outside. Whether you live in a neighborhood, you don't. Everybody just would visit New York City. So, again, though, I don't understand how this guy continues to pat himself in the back. And anyone could do this. You take a 7-day period, you have 7 good days, and all of a sudden, you're the greatest crime fighter in the history of mankind. But let's not forget the overall body of work, the last 6 months, the last year, the last 3 years. So here again, we're doing the old, I like to use the Eli Manning comparison. If Eli Manning played just 2 years out of the 20, he's the greatest quarterback in history. He won 2 Super Bowls. He looked like he was Joe Montana and his brother Peyton Manning in one quarterback. He played unconscious, no interceptions. The guy was great, and the Giants won 2 Super Bowls. But there was 18 other years where he led the NFL in interceptions 3 times. He was a par 500 quarterback. But we're just going to highlight those 2 years, and all of a sudden, he's the greatest of all time. And that's kind of what the NYPD is doing with this. January is notoriously a very cold month. Normally, the numbers are lower than they are at any point during the year. It's like almost historical. You can look this up. But we're going to tout one good week, and now we're the greatest of all time, and forget about the the history and the other work that we've done over the last few months that says that crime is trending in an upward pattern and it's dangerous. It's actually higher than it's been in 20 years. And that 20-year span includes when Ray Kelly was in charge. So that's the reality of what's going on. It's kind of like politics with polling. And what you do is you would poll 100 people, and you do it every week or every other week. And then you take these samples, and you know how you are with people by saying there's 100 people, and then every fourth or every 300 people, 400 people, you take 100 people off of it that you've surveyed. So that's how they do polling, actually. This is some inside baseball with that. And that's how you know the trends of whether you're up or down on how you're doing with the neighborhood. So this is the same exact thing. They're just playing around with numbers. The reality is, do you, New York City citizen, do you feel safe walking around the street? And if you measure it by that, was January a good month or not? I don't know. Just ask the average New York City citizen.
Marlon, what do you got, brother? What do you think? Why was crime down in January?
Yeah, I think everyone knows that's all marketing again, and all gaslighting, and that you just gotta step outside your house, take a trip to Manhattan, take a trip to the Port Authority after 10 p.m. Okay, we for the longest while we've memed that this department is the party department, but I also think when it's not the party department, it's the propaganda department, because everything is like messaging, and it's pushing, it's trying to shape the reality around it. It's trying to gaslight us that crime is down because of their genius policy making, in January. It's trying to tell us that what's effectively packed with more reliance on AI now is some new revolutionary strategy, rather than Ray Kelly's leftovers from what, 20 years ago now. It's all about messaging. You look at their Twitter, like it's got to be like at least once a day you see some sort of progressive messaging, some agenda that has nothing to do with policing. It's always some propaganda. It's always some message from this department. I think at this point, though, most New Yorkers kind of realize that things are amiss, and that the city is not the city that it once was. You simply have to step outside your house. The neighborhood I've lived in, right? I've lived here for what, going on 8 years now, right? We've never had any incidents of package theft, right? Never. You could literally leave a package outside your house and then come back 8-10 hours later and then still be there. Okay. I'm lucky in that it's like to me, it's like one of the last really great patches of the city that feels like you're not in the city. But I had a package theft in November, right? Never had it before. I had it in November. And last week, the precinct came by to let me know that there's another one. There's another pattern going around in the neighborhood. Luckily, they caught the dude. But the point I'm trying to make here is that people realize that things have changed. Okay, you can't gaslight people when people see the reality of how things actually are once they leave their house. So again, like I said, we shift from party department to propaganda department, and as Tish tries to emulate Ray Kelly and his often heavy-handed discipline, I think we're moving back into the propaganda department. So,
Coffee, donuts, VSS Ventores, big shout out, and a baker's dozen, $100. Telling the truth about what's happening out in the real world makes these people nervous and afraid. Spot on. You're right about that. Telling the truth, you know what, opens a lot of doors, and some for people, it closes doors too. As I said yesterday, if an audit at the level of what's happening at the federal level, the fraud, waste, and abuse that would be uncovered would make eyes and heads roll. VSS Ventores, you're right. Definitely, you mentioned Doge yesterday. Absolutely right. There's a major problem in funding, and our eyes have to follow. Our eyes have to follow the green, right? Follow the money, and you'll learn a lot. You'll see a lot of problems out there. Before I get into John's question here about January and what some of the factors are, why crime may actually be down for that period, and why the NYPD is touting it as a victory, I just want to say this. Perception is reality. Yesterday, I was training jiu-jitsu in LA, and there was this young guy there. He's never even been to New York. So his perception of New York is just what he sees, what he knows, and what he hears. And he's dying to get into the LA County Sheriff's Department. He's probably going to get in about June. And here's a young guy. He's in his early 20s, built like a brick shit house, trains jiu-jitsu, had an amateur career boxing, intelligent. He's got his head on his shoulders. And I said, if you're really dying to get into the police department, kid around, I said, the NYPD will take you with a pulse right now. He's like, oh, no. I said, I absolutely have no interest. I heard if you go to the NYPD, I'll probably end up in jail. So that's the perception. And that perception is reality. So let me get back to when we talk about crime in January. I used to kid around. I used to say, there's no better cop than police officer Rain and police officer Cold. So the environment does play a good role. And the police department can't have it both ways. Eric Adams told the public that in June and July that we could expect more people outside, barbecues, warm weather. That leads to more crime. So yet we didn't tout the fact that January, extreme frigid weathers also leads to a reduction in crime. So we can't have it both ways. The NYPD under Eric Adams gaslights and gives information and manipulates stats that makes them look good so that they can fight this whole perception. So again, shout out to Marlon. When you say perception management, you nailed it, brother. That is the theme of the Eric Adams administration. Not get stuff done. Perception management. Management of the perception of the public. Management of how the media portrays the NYPD and this administration. Everything falls under perception management. So, you know what? John will write his book, Crumbs. Marlon, I hope you write a book called Perception Management, because that's really what's going on. Also, what is another contributing factor for crime reduction in January 2025 compared to 2024 is this mass deployment in specific hotspots, not the curb crime, but the displaced crime. So that's another factor. And we're seeing most of our resources are now getting dumped into subways. There's approximately 36% decrease in crime reduction in the subway for January 2025. And that's because that crime was pushed out of the subways. And what we also have to question is reported crimes. What is actually being reported? How is it being categorized? And how is it being classified? So those are key questions that we should be looking at and see how that plays out. John.
Yeah, all right. So let's get to New York City Mayor Eric Adams. I think this is something that everybody's going to want to watch. Pay close attention to Eric Adams here. Let's see what he's got to say. This is early on in Adams' career. This is early on in Adams' term as a mayor. So, everyone wants to distance themselves from the corruption that's been happening inside of New York City Hall, inside of the NYPD. But, I mean, literally no one is shocked about the corruption. There's just a lot of grifters who are pretending to be shocked. Oh, I can't believe this. I don't know why it's happening. Eric Adams is really a great guy. Eric Adams really deserves a pardon. Put out this clip yesterday from 60 Minutes, and I thought it was like, listen to Eric's advice. Listen to Eric's advice to Phil Banks. And tell me this does not sum up Eric Adams.
Jobs and government.
Sal, what do you got?
Oh man, crumbs. That's what I'm thinking. Crumbs. That's is that what he's saying about Tim Pearson and Phil Banks or Eddie Caban? I mean, Jesus. Isn't that like he's almost prophetic? He was like announcing the future of what he is himself. He's not imperfectly perfect. He surrounds himself with corruptible people. That is the mantra of Eric Adams personally. His whole career in the public square has been surrounding himself with these kind of individuals, and he, in the end, who do you really blame here other than him? And I'm telling you, when Lieutenant Epps' case, which right now the feds are investigating, that there's no secret there. I showed the document from, we have the same attorney, and it was written that the feds intervened in that case. All roads lead back to Eric Adams. If he thinks he's going to get pardoned, he's living in a dreamland. There are other investigations that are just as serious, if not even more serious, than being a foreign asset, allegedly, is as the mayor. Because you can't turn a blind eye to, sexual assaults and harassment, and either you're in on it or you're complicit, or you're just saying, oh, that's my boy, I'm going to cover for it. I forgot Jeffrey Maddrey also in the circle of crumbs. So, it's like he's announcing what he should be, and he does the complete opposite. If there's anything his administration has been, is not transparent, and including the police department, who the only way to become transparent is through a 50A, through litigation. And now they have to be transparent. So now we're seeing things in the police department that 20, 30 years ago we couldn't see. So when people say, oh, this has been going on forever, yes, you're right. It probably has been going on forever. But has it gone on to this level? I don't think so. And also with the invention now of social media, how big social media has become, and the fact that there's documents that they have to produce on 50A of officers that have done, their discipline, you're able to pick out what's going on. Because the majority of the time, these people, and, I've highlighted this on This Week alone, certain officers that are going to cost the city millions and all this litigation, they have a history of bad behavior. And 50A is truly not even a reflection of an officer like, let's say, Eric Dim here. It's more a reflection on the leadership and who's in charge. Because you have to say to yourself, how is the same guys getting in trouble, costing all this money? And wait a minute, misleading statements. Isn't that a fireable offense? It's actually termination. So they deviate from this disciplinary matrix, which is all, a good set of words to use, but they don't even explain why they deviate from it, but they're supposed to technically by their own rules. So you're seeing that the whole thing is a farce, and it's just built to, contain the crumbs around Eric Adams and the ties back to the crumbs, so that there's not that much scrutiny, because again, it's a perception management, and they just go about their business. But they'll pick off and they'll make examples out of a good person and act like this good person is one of their people doing the crimes that they're committing. And that's who they exile off the police department, out of the fire department, out of the sanitation department. It's time and time again. It's only through now litigation that you're seeing these things. I think 50A is a good thing. I don't think that you should be able to run up on an officer in his face with a camera and start reading off their 50A. But if you're doing it from a distance, it's a First Amendment thing, and there's nothing you can do. So that's why 50A is needed, because of people like Eric Adams and the people that he surrounds himself with, that he put in charge, as I like to say, crumbs.
Marlon, Eric Adams said Phil Banks could have surrounded himself with better people. What do you think about that 60 Minutes interview?
You gotta give Eric Adams credit, man. He is a political genius, and he sure knows how to deflect questions. He's like the Matrix. He dodges bullets. Woo!
Sociopath. This guy's a sociopath. He'll look at you and lie about something he said like 10 minutes ago. He's just like completely detached from his own words. So right. I think besides crumbs, the theme of this is inexperience. I think Eric Adams was just so inexperienced in policing, even though he was a cop. I think he just was such a poor cop that he relied on Banks and Marjorie and even Caban and Pearson to do the stuff that he had no experience in doing. And as we know now, you see the path that they led him down to. But I also think also this relates to Ingrid Martin, because I think that a lot of the corruption we hear regarding the club goes back to and again, Eric and Ingrid.
He just dropped out. Eric, what do you got, brother?
He'll come back in, but
well, the Eric Stalling.
Yeah, he must have borrowed it. Maybe one of my Amazon packages. It got referred to Marlon's house. Anyway, I think Rob Lucash nailed it right here. Rob, how you doing, my brother? Great move. Surround yourself with people worse than you to take the fall when things go bad. That right there, that's exactly it, Rob Lucash. Shout out to you. VSS Ventura's Corey. More coffee, though, $5. Eric's a great guy. When he calls me a cracker and a honky, it's in a loving manner. Eric Adams for prison 2025. More coffee and donuts. GI bro. How you doing, brother? $4.99. There's no faith in the department until Kaz is gone. Every single promotion was discretionary. Nothing earned at all. Our bad. Shout out to you, brother. Coffee and donuts. $19.99. Good morning. Finest Unfiltered Constat Kids. As rare truth tellers and corrupt media, will you be applying for USAID funding? It sure feels great to wake up with Trump tornado hitting the corrupt state. Well, listen, when we get to politics as far as the Trump administration, I think some of the funding is going in the right spot. We're starting to remove illegal military age males throughout this country that are definitely a legitimate threat. So, John, back to that 60-minute interview. I think that Eric Adams is a political genius. As much as a moron he is, and I think you and I really nailed it when we say he's a moron, he is very impressive when he does interviews, and exactly what Marlon said. He's pretty much a sociopath and definitely an extreme amount of narcissism that he can actually answer questions and just straight out lie and not skip a beat. So that question is impressive, right? You really put him in the hot spot of basically saying, you, not that you surrounded yourself with these people, but you picked Philip Banks. That's your appointment. That's your responsibility. And you picked someone that lacks integrity. So what that interviewer is saying is how that means you lack integrity. But he deflected and said, perfect people are imperfect, or vice versa. Basically, what he said is he didn't say that Philip Banks did not make mistakes. He didn't say Philip Banks is a man of integrity. He did not support Philip Banks in that question. He said, people make mistakes. And what he did was he was smart. He didn't box himself in, and he left room, because if Philip Banks ever does get exposed, and if he's ever actually held accountable for his actions, well, then Eric Adams could say, well, I didn't say that he's perfect. I didn't say that he's a man of integrity. I said that people make mistakes. I don't know his mistakes. I don't know what he does, right? That's what Eric Adams does. So, Rob Lucas, you're absolutely right. I think it's intentional by Eric Adams, by surrounding himself with people that have even far less integrity than he does. Why do they have less integrity? It's because they're stupid, and they allow Eric Adams to guide him. So Eric Adams is responsible. Crazy 10-7 says Philip Banks is a monster. You're right. He is a monster, and he's the one who's behind a lot of the stuff that goes on with this administration. It never gets held accountable. Why? I'm sure he's some type of witness somewhere, because it appears to be that way. He is an unindicted co-conspirator. How would you bring this person back and, not your chief of department, but your deputy mayor of public safety, who is actually the de facto police commissioner at the time, who's advising your police department? How is that going to be effective for your police department in your mayoral tenure? Absolutely ridiculous. It's crazy. But Eric Adams, honestly, he's entertaining. I have to say it. He is entertaining. I can watch shows about Eric Adams before I watch a movie or a series right now. So you know what? I'll take another 4 years of Eric Adams. It's great for the podcast. We love it. Eric Adams, here's to you. John, I know you think the same thing.
4 more years for me. I'm Team Adams, baby. I'm Team Adams. Why not? Plus, I want him to be the mayor while we're still all in court with him, so that he could, so that he can't run away or pretend he's sick and he can't make it. So so there's numerous reasons I want him to be the mayor. So, all right, before we open up the floor, and I think we could just freestyle after this, let's just do one more topic, and then you guys just take turns going around anything you guys want to talk about. I think something that happened yesterday really shows what's going on inside of the New York City Police Department. So obviously mental health is a huge factor in policing, especially in the NYPD. Morale is at an all-time low. So obviously the mental health of the members of the New York City Department is at an all-time low. Times like this are ripe for suicide, with members under the amount of scrutiny that they're under, constantly being recorded, constantly recording themselves, high pressure, constantly running from job to job, under and behind the gun always. really no time for self-care, whether it be eating right, working out, taking time to yourself, because the majority of your life as a police officer will be spent at work. The second half of your life, you're trying to make up for the time you've lost with your family and your loved ones. So while they're playing behind the gun, the NYPD decides to do this suicide prevention awareness seminar. So when I look at this, I was going to write something really nasty, and I caught myself from doing it, and I didn't do it, which is unlike me, because usually I'll just do it. But I'm looking at it and I'm saying, is anybody going to hear this message that actually needs to hear the message? The dais, the speakers are all full of shit. They don't care about mental health. They don't care about Marlon's mental health. They didn't care about Sal's mental health. They didn't care about Eric's mental health. They didn't care about my mental health. And there are thousands of people who are all in similar situations, especially me and Marlon. There was about 16,000 members of the department that were in a similar situation, and even more when we talk about civilians that we are. We never talk about the issues. The mantra when it comes to suicide awareness is talk to somebody. We're here for you. But the thing is, there's really nobody to talk to in the NYPD, because the truth can't be told. You can't go and say, listen, I'm really struggling because there's no way for me to get promoted. I'm busting my ass. I'm watching the upper echelon of the police department do all of these corrupted moves. I'm watching people get promoted that don't deserve to be at all. I'm being demonized for the color of my skin. I'm being demonized for my gender. I can't get a transfer because every time I go to get a transfer, somebody that changed Kaz's tire or somebody that Kaz went to school with gets it ahead of me. I got transferred from Staten Island to the Bronx because Kaz didn't like the way I saluted him, and it's really upended my marriage and my time that I could spend with my children, because they changed my tour because of it. All of those things you can't talk about. So does the job really care about mental health? The mental health of his officers? And that's something I'm going to say absolutely not. This is more of a self-promotion seminar than anything to help members' mental health or help members who are suffering, possibly thinking of committing suicide. Because ultimately, this show has done more to help the mental health and wellness of people than health and wellness section and the police department as a whole, and numerous other mental health awareness organizations. And the reason that is not because we have the funding or we have anything to help people or we get them a dog to pet. It's because we mirror the thoughts that they're feeling. We say exactly what's happening. We don't beat around the bush with it. We don't say, oh, I'm here for you. Okay, you're here for me? Yeah, my CO is a maniac. He's tied up in running a racketeering scam around all the clubs in Manhattan. And my family and I are really suffering because he's a maniac and I don't know what he's going to do next. And I don't even feel safe around these people. They're criminals. What mental health organization are you going to go talk to about that? That's going to help you. Who's actually going to say anything to you? So us calling out and speaking the truth has done more for mental health, because officers realize, hey, wait a minute. I'm not crazy. This isn't normal. It's not me that's messed up. It's them. So what do you think? Does the police department care about police officers' mental health?
I would say not. They really don't. In fact, I would say that they're going to be people up top that kind of, if you're an issue, or maybe you can end their career or whatever it is, they would probably want you to kill yourself. It's better because then you're out of the way. Because remember how these people think. Many of them hang around mob associates. So how do you think a mob guy would think? Don't they want to rub people out? So, that's kind of some of the criminal elements that are up top. But again, on the job, the avenues you go to, the minute another it's also that shows almost to the other guys in the locker room and the girls in the locker room a sign of weakness. So if you try to pat your chest or you're trying to at least, when you go there, this kind of reminds me of high school. So when you're in the NYPD, it's high school all over again. Oh, and if you show any signs of weaknesses, that's how the other people in the locker room can gang up on you. And I don't mean like beat you up, but like you're going to get ribbed on. And some people that are already going through things, they can't handle that. And they get pushed to a limit that they don't know who to talk to. They don't know who to speak to because you're going to be deemed crazy. Are they going to take your gun? Are they going to suspend you? They don't suspend you if you're hanging out with mob associate, but they'll suspend you maybe for this. So that's the issue. I don't, again, I think these people are self-impressed people. There's a lot of them running in the New York City Police Department. I think the majority of them actually are chiefs and commissioners. They're all self-impressed people. So that whole speech you saw yesterday, there's a lot of people I could say now they're no longer here. I mean, you saw in 1 week, I think there was 3 officers that killed themselves. I think across America, there was big. Or in New York City or New York State, one of the two. Did anyone care about them? And in fact, I don't think there was any signs. Like no one knew exactly what was going on. And that's part of the problem. You're not going to know because they'll never, they can't speak anymore. But somewhere internally, and, I can speak to this because, look what I was going through. And I lost my father. And who do you speak to? Who do you go to? Because, again, it's a sign of weakness. And other people are watching you, especially your coworkers, your bosses. What are they going to think of you then? And if you're somebody who's prominent or let's say you're a guy who does, you're moving and you're trying to move up in the police department, you say that, the people that you will be competing against for a spot or to get a shield or whatever the case is will now, that guy has mental issues. And then they use it against you. So, and then they play these, we'll say, political games behind the scenes because NYPD is a political party all in itself, in reality. It's all political politics being played all over the place. So, again, this thing sounds like, once again, more self-impressed, like a self-impressed party, because that's what they like to do. And whether they really care or not, what do the numbers show? And it's really never going to be accounted for because this is not something that you're going to find out from the people that don't report anything. So the unreported is what we always look for. And the people that are actually having issues, we don't know. We don't know about the you're right. There are cops that got disciplined. Oh, I didn't salute this guy. I mean, heck, I was sent with my partner to All Out when I was in traffic at the very end when, we had the DWI team and they did all that stuff. They split me. They took me out. Why? Because I was under investigation. So they punish me, pre-punish you, send me from Staten Island to the Bronx. I was working in the 4-4, standing on a foot post like I was back in Impact. I really didn't care. But from Staten Island to there, and you have to work in the middle of the day. As you know, to go from Staten Island to next to Yankee Stadium at 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's 3 hours, 2.5 hours of driving. What do they call it? Highway therapy? And for what? Because my friend is Roger Stone? That's ridiculous. But these are the kind of games they like to play mentally. And that's what will weigh you down. But again, if you show weakness, they use that against you. I mean, I'm still here, but I'm sure there's many that said, man, I hope that guy just hangs himself or does something crazy. Because now look, without my entire story, minus me and everything that I uncovered, what would be the police department or what would be Eric Adams' administration or what would be everything going forward? Kind of like the Christmas story. You see that and they show him, this is your life. What happens if he wasn't alive, how everything changed. So that's how you take it. It's a story of survival for many people on the job. But I don't think some of these people, they say one thing and do another. I don't think they really care. especially those on top. They're self-impressed, could care less whether you're alive or dead. As long as they look good, they don't really care. That's how I feel.
Sal, Jonathan Mio says, I used to work with you in Citywide Task Force, Sal. You're a hardworking, very knowledgeable when it comes to this job. God bless you, brother. Continue your awesome work. Preach.
So, yeah. That's good seeing John. Yeah, I remember John. He's a good guy. A lot of good guys.
That's a nice compliment.
Very good people there.
So speaking of mental health, Marlon, and Marlon, your mic's muted. I don't know what happened to you last time, but speaking of mental health, we've had you on before and you've talked a lot, but what has being terminated from the NYPD? How did you feel during the time when you were being pressured to do something you didn't want to do? When you were ultimately fired and stripped of your career, your health care? How has a job helped care for your mental health? Did Health and Wellness reach out to you? What have the unions done for you? What has any of the last 4 police commissioners done for you? Did they really care about your mental health, or is it just guys that are active, that are happy, the mental health that they care about, not guys that have grievances? Marlon Bethel was terminated without being charged criminally, without being charged administratively, without receiving a civil penalty. So there's literally no black mark in Marlon's record. He received 0 due process. He was never given what's known as charges and specifications, which is required by law in New York City. He never received a department trial, which is required by law in New York City in order to fire a cop. Marlon, what has the job done for you and your mental health, and how has the job, particularly them terminating you without due cause, terminating you non-disciplinary, which I've never heard in my life. I don't even know what that means. It's like uncompensated security. All of these nice made-up terms. What has that done for your mental health? And during this time, has anyone reached out to you to try to see if you or your family's okay, or make sure you aren't homeless on the streets of New York starving?
Yeah. It never actually hit me until like a couple of months after it had actually happened. They had actually terminated me, that I was terminated. I called one of my colleagues at Intel, and I asked him one of my friends, right? I asked him to run my name and see if I'm still in the system. He ran my name and he saw that I wasn't there anymore. And then it kind of hit me, like, oh shit, they really got rid of me, And that's when I made some phone calls and tried to find out my status. And again, I was reminded that, yeah, you were terminated, even though I was never given any termination notice or anything. But yeah, it was really tough. Like I would go through like different emotions. I'd go through like anger, and then I kind of like not depressed, but just like a sadness, that my career ended on this note, because none of us, we're all here now, but none of us ever imagined that our careers would be like this. We all thought we'd, go through the ranks or finish where we wanted to be on the job, and then, walk out into the sunset with a retirement like everybody else, and the fact that I ended up here it was really hard, Like I said, I didn't know it was anxiety until I actually saw that episode where John talked about it, and then I realized, oh shit, this is anxiety, I'm like, it was really, really hard, really hard. There were times when I would get into calling personnel to find out what's going on, and just to feel how the department kind of like, just like, it was like overnight, I was no longer a cop, It's like it was like me being an outsider trying to get information. And all I wanted to do was find out, was I terminated, and where was my termination notice? The unions, the DA itself, I mentioned before, right? Brian McGuire and Paul DiGiacomo, right? Neither of those two guys did anything for me, okay? And I say it again to everyone listening. They're useless, okay? A little inside baseball for you guys watching, right? There's one of the union members in the chat who keeps, he's trying to shift the narrative, right? Asking what exactly did, asking me for a timeline of what the unions did to help me. Now, I'm not going to indulge him, okay? I want you to, the unions did nothing for me because to this day, I've never been given charges and I've never had my department trial, okay? Where are either one of those? How could I be terminated without either one of those? It's absolutely the way this department treats cops, okay? It's egregious, okay? It's like you have no value to them aside from warming a seat until they could get the next guy to fill your seat, okay? And you see this behavior reflected by your own union who you pay dues for, It's been 3 years, and this union member, like I said, is asking questions about it. Like, where were you guys? Where were through 3 years? 3 years now, right? He's a trustee, by the way, okay? So he's not asking it out of personal concern. He's 100% asking it because the union is fishing right now, okay? So where were you guys for the last 3 years, okay? Where were you guys? You have cops who literally lost their homes, okay, and have had to relocate and change their lives completely, and you remain quiet on it. I can no longer recommend this department for anybody who asks me, because the way they treat you is it's like you're a number, okay, and you're not a human being, okay, and this has got to change, okay? Otherwise, I don't see where the future of this job is going. But
Marlon, your pain, Marlon's pain is real. There's no doubt about it that Marlon is speaking from the heart. His pain is real. You can't fake this. The stuff that I've been through was really challenging. I think the stuff that John has been through is super challenging. Sal, yourself, of course, too. But Marlon, I think your case is really an exception, and you're right. I mean, and I really I'm honored that you're on our team and you're part of our family, because your story, the way you're telling it, it's real, and that's why I say, John, you know what? That seminar that they had, to me, you could change that name of suicide prevention and awareness to the eternal pressures of the NYPD. I think that should be the name of the seminar. And, it's interesting, right? So while I was going through my trials and tribulations, and everyone, when you go through something, it always feels like it's the worst, right? But, when I look at my stuff, I look and I hear about Marlon's case, I'm like, wow, I guess I didn't have it that bad, right? I mean, in comparison, right? I was able to make it out with a pension, but, feelings are relative, right? So that's why I don't judge anybody, right? There's people that have issues in the police department I think are far less, but I'm not going to knock them. I would be sitting in my office. I had 8 sets of administrative charges in 6 weeks. I had a pile on my desk. Everybody knew. I started basically building like my own crime scene, doing my own investigation and combating these CCRBs. I was ready to take them, everyone, to administrative trial. I just didn't get due process. They never afforded me the opportunity. I was told I would have to wait 2 to 3 more years. And I wasn't willing to wait that long, because in those 2 to 3 years, I was going to be a casualty and I wouldn't make it out. CCRB, had their teeth in me. And so while this is going on, I would have some cops come to me, and terrified that they have to report for their first CCRB or a GO15. And I have to admit, initially I was like, damn, you're coming to me to complain about one CCRB one GO. I had 8 GOs in one day. 8 GOs one day after COVID. They brought them up all in one day. I was exhausted. It was like 5 times doing this podcast. But then I said to myself, I took a seat back and said, you know what? Everything is relative. And the reason why this cop is so alarmed is because there's no support on this job. And John, you said it. There's no one to talk to. Who do you talk to? Who do you go to for advice? So while this was going on, I volunteered my time and I went to a few seminars at Papa. I was not feeling suicidal, but my mental, I guess you could say, foresight was starting to break down. You know, I was getting to the point where I would drive to work and we were getting into the parking lot. I was like, another day of this? Wow. And I think ultimately the problem is abandonment. And I think that's the number one issue, I would say, right? Think about this. We all want to be a part of something, right? You join an organization, right? I joined the Marine Corps, or some people are religious, right? Maybe you're part of a church, or even if you're on a bowling team, whatever the case, you want to be a part of something. So now you're in the NYPD, right? They say this is the largest gang. You're a part of something. This is supposed to be a brotherhood. People are supposed to care about you. And I say the number one reason what leads to an epidemic of mental health and potentially suicide, thank God I was never suicidal. But I think that it makes sense. And I think it's abandonment. And that's because of the eternal pressures of the NYPD. And it makes sense to me. What this tells me also is that we have the overwhelming majority of the people in the NYPD, except these people right now that are just running a criminal enterprise, and these people that are just enjoying the fruits of nepotism, potentially this pay for play for promotion. They're good people. And it's normal that they're actually feeling a deterioration of their own mental health. If they weren't, honestly, we could say the cops are psychos. They go to work. The public hates them. The media hates them. The legislation has been torn down. They can't even do their job. And those external pressures. But once they get to work, the internal pressures, it's no support from the police department when it comes to CCRB. If you're under civil litigation, there's no support. You might not get indemnified. If you're out there doing your job, instead of getting training and educated, you're getting disciplined. The internal press, and then ultimately, if you are in a pickle, you suffer abandonment. And that happened to me. I went from Captain America, and then all of a sudden, I was the guy that gave me leader of the finest, lieutenant of the year, all this stuff. They loved me. Oh, you're doing a great job getting all these guns. But then when I had 8 sets of administrative charges in 6 weeks, immediately I had leprosy, and they abandoned me. I was in my office. No one asked how you doing. No one cared. They were afraid to talk to me. You know, it was almost like sometimes I'm walking around and I can see people intentionally avoid me, avoid the small talk. And I said to myself, you know what? I really, at that point, where it really got me is I don't care what the papers write about me. I don't care. I don't care what they say about me. I'm a tough person. But the people that I worked with, that I trained, the people that I care about, the people supposedly care about me, they left me abandoned. They left me for dead. And I decided, you know what? I'm not going to allow this to happen. I said, I'm going to rise above. Right? That's when I reached out to John. I found out about Johnny Mac. John was out on social media. He was already speaking out. He'd already left the police department. And I said, John, we worked together as rookies. Listen, I don't know if I'm going to make it out of here. I might get terminated. I might not. But no matter what, I want to get out there and I want to tell my story. So, and that's what it is. And I said, you know what? I never expected to be here. And I asked myself, how did I get here? But you know what, Marlon? I know you're suffering pain, and we all are, but take that pain and turn it into something positive, because you're a hero, because you still stood by your moral principle. You're still standing. They didn't knock you down. And you know what? I'm glad to be here. In the end, they did me a favor, and I'm glad to be here because those tough times only make you better. And without those tough times, I wouldn't have the finest Unfiltered family. I wouldn't have this connection with all these friends and these listeners and the viewers on the podcast and this new realm that we've been in. So you know what? Thank you, NYPD. I appreciate it. We're off to bigger and better. So you know what, Marlon, we're only going to strive through this better. Sal's going to be vindicated, reinstated, and compensated. Every one of us, we're going to strive right through this. And if anything, we're going to be better. And John, your voice is being heard about this mandate. And the more that this goes on, that's why Jimmy Rodriguez came after you and tried to make threats. Because it wasn't just this podcast. It was because they knew that you had the voice and you had Teachers for Choice and you had Bravest for Choice and these groups behind you and in front of you when it came to the mandate. And they knew that they violated rules and they violated laws and they knew you were ahead of that. So it was the combination with this podcast and us building a team and building a family. So for that, thank you, NYPD.
So Sal, you were completely used and abused. You were under investigation for about 2 years. You were being followed around all while you were out on the streets of New York, arresting people, writing summonses. They had they had to terminate you after your trial, but all up until your trial, all while they were following you, it was perfectly fine for you to be out on the streets in New York City. Your father was rest in peace to your dad. He was dying. So you're living through the trauma of your having to realize your parents' last short time on earth that you have left with him. And you're out there, you're still doing your job every day, knowing you're under investigation, knowing you're being demonized by this mayor who had a hate and a disdain for Donald Trump. And he associated in the NYPD Donald Trump with you. And he terminated you. What happened during that time? What was did Health and Wellness reach out to you, see how you're doing? Did anybody in the job at all care about your mental health, or were you just the Donald Trump guy that needed to get fired in the NYPD to prove a point that there are no Republicans in this department, there are no Donald Trump supporters in this department? And now, 3 years later, it's perfectly fine to be a Donald Trump supporter in the NYPD because Eric Adams needs a pardon.
He also can associate with Roger Stone, apparently, too, because he was with Roger.
Oh, and you can criminally associate with Roger Stone as well. As Sal Greco can't, but Eric Adams can.
Yeah, and his detail that was with him there, John Shell and all those other guys. But that was a dark time. I'm not going to lie. I lost my father. My father was a hero to Italian Americans, big guy in the food industry business, pizzerias, and the guy never had a funeral. That bothers me to this day. Not a funeral. I wasn't allowed to call people because they were monitoring my phones. They actually asked me about Frank Morano, who is now running for city council and will be on the show at a certain point. The job had him. They were running names of all the people that I had spoken to on the phone. And it said Frank Morano, and on the bottom, no criminal record, which means Mr. Jeremy Orenstein ran his record. Jeremy Orenstein's a criminal. I don't know what he's still doing on the job, but it's a job littered with criminals who continue in their positions and get rewarded. So at this time was very dark because my father had gotten sick. Remember, everyone can tell who I am. I read it and say it how it is. So if I had done anything illegal, I would have been the first one to say, here I am, I could care less. But it's never happened. In fact, Eric Adams has been to the Capitol more times than Sal Greco has because I've never been there. And he was just a couple weeks ago. So they kept accusing me of things that I never did. There was a huge hysteria. Proud Boys, Oath Keepers, two groups I never associated with. I just happened to, unfortunately, run into them like millions of other human beings. And now they want to smear you and say you're this, you're that. And that's what the police department / Eric Adams tactic is. They smear you. They do all these things. But in this time, I became a leper. And I couldn't understand, if I'm such a bad guy, why am I full duty? So New York City Police Department personnel that are watching this and don't know, I was terminated full duty. I was never suspended. I was never modified. So I wasn't a threat to anything, nor was I lying. I was giving misleading statements, but that's what they said. But I was still full duty, making arrests, going to trial, and convicting people. So that shows you what the reality of what was going on is. And eventually it's going to come to a head because I think we're doing a schedule this week or today about depositions. And I want to see people like Juju, what they're going to say when their hero, Kaz Dodry, is being slaughtered in a deposition and why he wasn't fired. We're going to find out why he wasn't fired. But this time was very dark. My father had brain cancer. No one in my family knew. But unfortunately, I was under a barrage of January 6th, Roger Stone, Donald Trump, you're an insurrection, all this stuff. They were following me around. There was a guy that followed me from my house to the hospital in Pennsylvania. And ultimately, my father, these were his final hours. I don't really want to get into what was said because there wasn't much being said from my father. You have brain cancer. I don't know if anyone's understand that. I think some people might hear, and you have brain damage in the comments. But when that moment hit, the police department followed me. They followed me, and I was even in Pennsylvania. My family said there were cars outside, unmarked cars. I would love to know if that was a police department and what they did, because eventually, as you know, I went through, there was more to the story. There was the January 6th thing. There was this ridiculous thing where they try to wrap me up in some COVID card scam that Jeremy Orenstein was looking at, that apparently the people that were guilty of this didn't lose their jobs. Ask Eddie Caban that one. But somehow they wanted to put my name in this hat. Like I don't even know the people that were doing this stuff. I was going home. I didn't have any friends. I was a leper. But I barely even left New York City. Now, when you ask what they did for you, what they want to do, these people that were in the union, remember the delegate himself, when the trial came, wanted to show, let me go to your department trial because they want a picture with Roger Stone. That's what that was all about. And I rejected all of them. All of them. I didn't want any of these people there. None of them were there for me. They were just more like saying, I'm guilty of something when I wasn't. You're guilty of something. You're guilty of something. But unbeknownst to me, all these union guys were hanging out with Jimmy Rodriguez, a self-admitted criminal mob associate who's littered in criminality all around them and in his place. And, the place was owned by the police commissioner's brother, too. So while this is going on, that's what these people are doing. And they're up to their eyeballs in criminality. But I'm the bad guy. And the whole weight of the world was coming down on me. Eric Marlon, I could tell, and I relate with Marlon. I literally would go home. I never said this publicly. I shut the lights off and stare at an empty room for hours. That's what I did. Because I said, I'm all alone. I don't have my dad no more. My family's a mess. And to this day, I don't, as close as I was with my family, there's always, now there's a whole rift. My father's gone and no one was ever really able to keep the family together because he was more to gel. And I was dealing with, I'm an insurrectionist, apparently, because that's what the job is saying. I got to come to work and hear the snickers and the laughs and stuff when I didn't do anything wrong. I did not ever go to this damn building. And it's funny how now everyone is pardoned. And now everyone's trying to be Donald Trump's buddy. But the questions were, what did I know? Did Donald Trump speak to Roger Stone? Were there talks of pardoning people back then? They didn't talk about I don't know what the hell they were making up in their minds. None of it ever happened. None of it. And the evidence proved this. And even though they obtained the evidence illegally, they still went ahead with, well, there's no evidence of anything. You're not guilty of any crimes, but you're friends with this guy, so we got to torture you. So that's when I was also transferred. Remember, I said that. So I did about 6 months where I had to every day drive from Staten Island to the Bronx. And it's not like I don't miss. I mean, I was a good precinct at 4-4, but that period, that was 2 hours to get there, another hour to go home at 2 a.m. So that's 3 hours of your day just to go to and from work when it was 30 minutes or less before. And that's a whole nother toll it took. I'm being punished before I even get, go to a trial room, which I had to decide whether I want to do it or not. Because remember, they wanted 60 in a year. They said, take the 60-day penalty in a year with all the disciplinary matrix that, all these people never get terminated for. And, but that's what they wanted from me. That experience would probably beat someone else down because trust me, staring in a dark room and not knowing what to do, a lot goes through your head. Nobody ever asked me, my closer friends that I did see would say, are you all right? But they weren't cops. The cops really just said, I hope everything goes right with you. They're afraid. If I talk to him, are they going to investigate me? That's how everybody thinks on that job. You know, you never really look at what it is. And I'm not talking about a guy like Brian Mahone that beat somebody and misleading statements, kept his job, threatens you guys while he's on a probation, and now beat up someone else and broke their jaw. But he's a good cop. Talk to some people. Oh, he's a good cop. So forget that he's acting like a thug. And he's being protected by someone, and we just don't know who that someone is. But that's okay. Keep that guy on. He's great. But guys like Marlon or myself or John or Eric, they're no good because they're speaking out against things like Eric Adams and all the corruption around him, which doesn't get exposed without us for this. Let's be honest. So, I look back and I look, how can I change things? And there are going to be people that don't like me. And I know that. There's always people. And there's people who don't like Rogers, people don't like Trump. But there's people that do like me. I just say focus on the message of what we're saying. Focus on what we're saying. Take your feelings out of it, because your feelings are what gets you in trouble. Feelings are how the whole thing happened with me. Oh, he has to be guilty of something. No, I wasn't guilty of anything. Your hatred for one man turned into a witch hunt that spun back around in circles. So that's just, I say this: if you have issues, if something happens to you, and the job doesn't care, trust me, I'll tell you, they didn't care about me. They wanted me to be a good soldier. Even with all that stress, they never cared. They never asked. They don't wear your numbers. That's all they care about. So I say stick to a small circle around you, but you're going to get stronger out of something like this. If you come out of that, you could be the next Finest Unfiltered, or you could be the next Eric Dim or John McCarry or Sal Greco or Marlon Bethel. You come out swinging, and then you're the next person rising, and you're basically combating the system, because it's the system. This is the system. That's the system of law enforcement, unfortunately. And now I just want to be that voice for the voiceless. And if you have a problem or an issue, you come to us and we're going to point it out. Because at the end of the day, Mayor Eric Adams or Commissioner Eddie Caban, when you throw that shield off your shoulder, you're just Ed Caban. You're just Eric Adams. You're just Phil Banks. They live off of power. And without power, they're nobody. You can't shake their hand because, like you said, look what they do around them. Look at the criminality and the stuff that they're doing around them. That's who they really are. But they portray themselves as, I'm deputy commissioner, deputy mayor, so-and-so. Anyone could say that. I'm Sal Greco, and I could talk to you and shake your hands. I never took my police officer status anyway. I didn't care. I used to laugh about a lot of stuff that happened on the job all the time with people. But you won't believe this stuff. It is sometimes the greatest show on earth. It's the front row seat to it, but it came at a cost. I don't know if I can ever get it back. I probably won't ever be as close to my family again. I got the New York City Police Department to thank. So kudos to you guys in the police department. You won that little battle, but you most certainly will not win this war. And it's funny how one guy did all this damage to all these people that are in charge. Just think of it that way. And I'm with you, Marlon. I back you 100%. You go to my Instagram, I posted a short video, and it was a little clip of me and Marlon speaking. You got some guy trying to stick up for these two, McGuire and DeGiacomo. I don't know them personally, but I asked the question saying, did they go to Consofrito themselves? And the guy got all bent out of shape. Do you have evidence and stuff? So I said, listen, cut the Joe Cop talk crap, because I don't relate to Joe Cop. I relate to people that are, thinking, the thinkers in the world. The union, this is what it really looks like. Forget about Joe Cop world in the bars and where you're drinking. You guys abandoned Marlon Bethel. You did nothing for him. Nothing. You didn't help this man at all. You completely abandoned him. But many of you that are in leadership positions in the union and the union heads were partying with Jimmy Rodriguez, and we have the video. The world has seen it. So you were all criminally associating. You're getting away. God knows what else you did. You got people, certain people like a head of fraternal organizations that did things or alleged to have done things and are being investigated for it. But you want to come out with some vitriol against someone that was fired for no reason. And I can tell you this, Marlon, I spoke to someone, and maybe you need to speak to a certain attorney, because he didn't know that case, your case in particular, and said, why aren't you suing these people? What happened? So just to let you know, Marlon, you have more people on your side than you think. And if you want to be some tough guy, Joe Cop with me, or want to pull a race car with me, you're picking on the wrong guy. I've been through too much because I'm still the guy that stood in that dark room and gave me a lot of time to think. That's not going to work on me. Go try your low information game with other people. Marlon, I got you back, man.
Before you answer, I just want to read out a couple of these coffee and donuts. You're getting so much support right here, and I want to say, I think right now this group that we have, we're supporting each other more between this Finest Unfiltered family, friends, and listeners than we got from support from the NYPD. So you know what?
Just Eric, just please don't read out that loser Juju with his stupid logo.
Come on, you know me better than that. Of course not.
No, I know. I just screw him. I'm still waiting for him every time I go to New York. You know, I'll still keep posting where I'm at in hopes that you show up one day. I'm still the same guy that I was in the schoolyard when I was a kid. So we could.
Everybody's a tough guy behind the keyboard. There's a lot of people behind the keyboard that want to beat me up. Man, $99.99 coffee and donuts, Baker's Dozen. Thank you so much, Marlon. There's a lot of support for you. My wife wants to give Marlon a big hug and says the level of uncaring and disdain for the best and brightest young NYPD men and women is truly heartbreaking and disgusting. The growing Finest Unfiltered family with multiple truth-telling hosts is the answer. Thank you so much. You're absolutely right. VSS Ventura's, he's a baller today. Thank you so much. Coffee and donuts, $10. Here we go. Here's some extra Republic credits. Marlon, life is good, my friend. It's hard, but let the past lay where it is. Time to forge a new path and crush all doubt. That's a great point. You know, I was reading some stuff, some Buddhism stuff, and a lot of that is people tend to just live in the past and create their own misery. I like that. Stephen S., been a hell of a great friend of the podcast. Dude, we got to meet in person, brother. Shout out to you. Says, stay strong. God and the courageous stand with you. Justin A., coffee donuts, $5. Thank you for all your insights and passing good, solid information to young men and women who are interested in getting into law enforcement. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, friends and listeners. Marlon, to you, brother.
Yeah, I just want to thank the chat. Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I don't really talk about this, and I tend not to wear my emotions on my sleeve. So when I do talk about this, every now and then it kind of like hits me, you know. But like I said, I've kind of moved on, and it doesn't really, you know, it really doesn't affect me as much these days as it did when it happened in 2022. You know, I found a home here thanks to John, Eric, and Sal, and this is the Finest has been very therapeutic, you know, in terms of, you know, just trying to move on from all that happened. But like I said, I personally like I've, you know, in the long run, I think we're all going to be proven right, and that the job is going to apologize to all of us. So it's one of the reasons why like I've kind of moved on. But you know, the sadness about it is in a lot of ways for you guys who are still on there, you know, and have to go through this, and every day you're there, you know, you're going through it right now. You know, we've had our troubles with the job, but we're not there anymore. You guys are there every day, you know, and unfortunately, you have to continually live through this, and this is something that has to change. It has to change. You have to respect. The job has to respect its cops. You have to respect your employees, and you have to treat them like human beings. Okay, because in the long run, if I've said this before, if the job treats cops like this, then cops are going to push that same treatment onto the public at large, and it's no good for anybody, you know. So I thank you guys for your sentiments in the chats, and you know, we're I love this little community that we have going for us, and I think I keep saying I wish this existed years ago, you know, because we, in a lot of ways, we fill a void that the job has kind of like, the job isn't doing, the unions aren't doing, you know. So thank you guys again. And like I said, I'm really fine. And I think I think when all is said and done, I'm gonna come out of this in a much better position than I was going in. So.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I was sorry to bring it up. So listen, this was a little deep, this conversation. It's kind of my fault. I turned it into that. I apologize. Let's have a little bit more fun with this. Let's open up the floor. Eric, we'll go to you first. But before we do, we're making a new website. I got one request from Marlon. So we got a new website coming. These are going to be sold, the party department patches. So you gave me an idea. We need a propaganda department patch since the party department has officially left with the ending of the Cash for Ash program, or what's known as On Duty Booty. So the party department, the Con Sofrito, ordering all of the units to have parties at Con Sofrito, that's gone. The nightly dances and award ceremonies are gone, so we need to honor them. These are Velcro on the back, so they'll go on your badge. These will be on the website. They're not for sale yet. Once the website's finished and completed, updated, they'll be on sale. You can get them. But we're going to need a propaganda department patch as well to honor Jessica Tisch's police department. Jessica Tisch, Ray Kelly, and Bill Bratton's new New York City Police Department under the most corrupted mayor, the first indicted mayor in New York City history. Also on sale, we got the flagship logo. That will be coming too as well. Also Velcroed on there as well. So these patches, really well-made patch. So let's open it up. What do you guys want to talk about? We go another half hour, whatever. Eric, anything on your mind? Anything you see this week? Anything that you want to get into? Oh, before you do. Sorry. There's one thing I have to point out. I'm sorry. There's one thing I have to point out. I forgot. I had a lot on my head. I'm listening to you. I'm listening to Marlon. I'm listening to Sal. And I just have to say, while Eric was on the verge of termination, we have officers who are accused of punching and beating prisoners who were handcuffed. And they were never indicted. They were never arrested. They were never suspended. Something that Eric Dim would never do in his entire career and would expect those individuals to be arrested and terminated off the New York City Police Department. And they weren't. But let's get rid of Eric Dim for nonsensical allegations. While Marlon was terminated from the NYPD, there was an officer who was in Intel. He was in the Intelligence Bureau, also with Marlon. Instead of having integrity, what he did is he submitted a fake card, which is a forged document, which is a felony in New York City. It's a misdemeanor and a felony. It's 2 charges. 1 for obtaining the fake card, 2 for having it entered into the system, which is the felony, right? And he ultimately uploaded it to the system, which is the felony, because you were required to do it on your own. That's why they made you upload it. So this intelligence officer worked in the same bureau as Marlon, uploaded a fake forged document, felony. He was ultimately transferred to the ferry and now reassigned to Intel. He still has his career. So Sal, there was another officer who also submitted forged documents, so committed a felony, committed a misdemeanor, but also on top of that, went to Internal Affairs Bureau twice lied in official interviews. Twice. And guess what? Ed Caban, Eric Adams all went to bat for her. She's still working today in the New York City Police Department. So I just wanted to point out the hypocrisy of those stories. When you listen to these men talk about why they were forced out of their career, why they were terminated, why their lives were destroyed, and then you look at that, the things they were accused of was nowhere near as egregious of the Crumbs administration and their low integrity, corrupt cronies. And they're working today. They're out on the streets of New York. They're going to arrest your children. They're going to write summonses to your children. They're going to get you if there's a leaf on your license plate, because they need to make sure that congestion pricing's working and those cameras could properly get your license plate. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up because I needed to just highlight the hypocrisy. I meant to do it before I showed the patches. So Eric, what do you got? What are you seeing, brother?
All right. First of all, I love the patches. Our friends and listeners, get a patch. Please. And I tell you what, the tides are turning. I remember when John and myself, when we started with the Infancy this podcast, and we put out some shirts. So if you have an opportunity, please. The shirts are actually still at Myers in Brooklyn, the Bronx, and Staten Island, NYPD police store, where we have the finest unfiltered shirts. It's our first T-shirt for this podcast. And initially, cops were terrified to buy the shirt. There were some that bought it. They wear it at home, or they wear it in the gym, but not really out in public. But the tides are starting to turn. We have cops like Hassan. Now his name is Hassan Mo on here. And I give him a lot of credit. He uses his real name on the podcast. He watches the podcast. And he says, I only have to answer to God. He's not going to allow the NYPD control what he thinks, what he sees, and how he operates as a man. So I got nothing but love and respect for people like Hassan, for actually put themselves out there. But now, you know what? The tides are starting to turn. We're not just two maniac radicals that they have called us. There are all the derogatory terms that have been referred to John, myself, Marlon, and Sal for being on this path and just talking about the truth. And at the age of 45, I've learned at this point that telling the truth is not always a positive thing for some people. I hear, a lot of times cops call me and say, you guys are always negative. You and John are always negative. And listen to Sal, it's negative. And now Marlon, too, he's negative. It's, okay. So telling the truth, telling what's really going on, being critical is negative. But if I tell you lies, I'm a positive person. So it took me 45 years to learn that. So if I lie, so I said, that's what people want. You'd rather me lie to you and not tell you the truth. And that's the problem with the NYPD also. We have people that are lying to each other because they want to be nice. This nice guy syndrome. Let's all be nice to each other. With that being said, I said eventually we deserve a public apology. Marlon said eventually that public apology will come. And you're right. You know what? But honestly, it's the last thing on my list that I actually want or care about. Because just like Serpico, it'll probably come in 50 years from now when it's far too late and $1 short. And I might not even be here in another 50 years. So I don't want an actual public apology. What I want is to see real change. That's the way you can apologize to myself, John, Sal, and Marlon, by making actual change. That's the only way an apology comes. But just by saying it and giving me a plaque, I tell you right now, if the NYPD decides that they want to give me a plaque, you can take that plaque and throw it in the garbage. I don't want it. I refuse to have a walkout. I said, doesn't even make sense to me. Why am I going to have a walkout? I work nights. It's going to be all the people on the day tour that I didn't even work with. It doesn't even make sense. And half of them abandoned me and thought I have leper. And exactly what Sal said, I was a leper. I went from Captain America to a leper. But all of a sudden, you want to clap for me? Are you clapping, congratulating me, or clapping then I'm leaving? So there's a lot of phoniness going on. But hey, let's try to be positive. Let's talk about something positive. I'm loving life right now. I can tell you right now, I hear all the time, even Lou Turco told me, just go enjoy your pension. When John and I first started doing this podcast together, Lou Turco said, can you guys just stop podcasting? Just stop. Just go enjoy your life. I'm like, okay. What do you think? We're not enjoying it? We're enjoying this. I actually love this. I look forward to it. I get up 4 a.m. to do this podcast, to get, to speak to my buddies here who become my family here, outside my family, and my friends and listeners here. We've joined this bond here. We got a whole community. I love it. And then, of course, Lou Turco, to cover his own ass. I remember I called John. I go, can you believe what Lou Turco's telling me? He calls me back. He's like, I bet he's going to call you back. 30 seconds later, bling, there's Lou Turco, right? And he's like, you know what, Eric? Actually, I love what you guys are doing. It's great. And tell John I love his tweets, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So 30 seconds later, the whole thing changed because he thought I was recording him. Lou, I'll just tell you right now, don't worry. I know you like to cover your own ass. I never recorded you. So that's not something I would do. But the point is, I'm loving life. I'm RVing throughout the entire country. At some point, I stopped doing the RV. I went backpacking with my family through Brazil, Thailand, Malaysia, Bali. I went school to school doing jiu-jitsu. I competed in Malaysia. I had a great time. Back in the States, I've been on the West Coast, training school to school, doing jiu-jitsu, meeting the finest people, traveling around in my RV, spending time with my wife and kids, fixing my RV. I learned so much. Doing the podcast, doing the research on it. So you know what? Life outside retirement is outstanding. And just because can we not replace the word retirement with dead? Because I feel like sometimes people are like, oh, you're retired? What are you going to do now? It's almost like you're dead. What am I going to do now? The sky is the limit. So my message is this to the cops that are on the job right now. And if you're at that 20-year mark and you're wondering, what do I do now? And let's be honest, most of the cops are terrified of the other side. They're terrified of climbing over that fence. Right? They got one foot out the door, but they still got the foot in the police department, as bad as it is, because they're terrified of what's on the outside. You have garnered so much skills and talent, being a New York City police officer or any rank. You have so much information. You are vital to the workforce out there. And you don't have to work for somebody. You have so many skills. You could be an entrepreneur. You could even do a podcast. So the sky's the limit. Don't be afraid. And without risk, there's no reward. So my point is just jump into it, make it fun. Honestly, I love doing this. It's fun. It's growing. It's becoming, it's morphing into media. We never expected it to be this, but you know what? I enjoy it. I'm having fun. And what's better than hanging out with a couple of cop buddies and talking about what's going on. And you know what? It's my day. I get to choose what time I want to go train. I get to choose who I want to talk to. And I don't have to listen to the police department by ineffective leadership. And I got to hook up. I get to choose the leadership that I thought was effective, right? Ron Layson is in our circle. Rob Lukash, Tom Joyce. We've been able to cherry pick and find the good people from the police department, the people that are intelligent, the people that skills. Look at all these fine people. Tom Joyce, Vernon Gerbeth, John McCary, Sal Greco, Marlon Bethel, Tom Joyce. There's so many people that could, all our friends and listeners, these are fine people, and we've built this community. And you know what? We're now making, just as Serpico said, the dishonest cop should fear the honest cop, not the other way around. Well, you know what? The dishonest NYPD should fear our voices, and our voices should not fear the dishonest NYPD at the upper echelon. John, thank you for that question, man. I appreciate it. I think this, let's be positive.
Well, I wasn't asking you for positivity. I was saying, what you see this week that you want to talk about? Sal, what do you got? Anything this week that you want to talk about? But thank you for the positivity, Eric. We need a little, especially with me and Sal. I think you and Marlon are probably the more positive guys. Me and Sal are the negative. Yeah. With the yin and the yang. Sal, what do you got this week? Anything before we get out of here? Like, what are you seeing? Anything you want to go around about this week that happened, or what you see coming, or anything?
Well, I think this week, actually today on the show today, I'm going to have Eric on, and it's an epic show. We cover a lot of different things, and me and Eric are going to discuss the 50A, which is something that this week I brought out not only with Marlon on the show on Monday. I brought out some new details because I think the 50A, which is what reveals what officers, I think it's a good thing. And I don't know if you agree with it, John, but Eric and Marlon agree with me that you need that because we have no transparency. I wish I could sit here and throw a party and say everything is great the way they do when they were going to Con Sofrito throwing parties with criminals. But the NYPD is not transparent, and that's the problem. We are advocating for this stuff, but you can't just do it by saying it. You got to prove it. So, well, I think someone in the comments, low information or whatever, said that I don't have statistics. My whole show, everything I do is based off of statistics. It's off of fact-based analysis. It isn't just saying, Eric Adams is great like you do, or Obama was great, or whatever race-baiting leader you think was great. And that's for the low information guy in the comments there. I don't want to mention his name. But, going forward, I guess tonight is highlight. I don't know if everyone knows on Friday nights is highlight. So tonight at Magic City Fronton, my highlight Chargers, they are the defending champions of Magic City Fronton. They're facing off, I believe it's taking on the Cyclones. That's tonight at 7 o'clock. You check it out on ESPN. That's something positive every Friday night. The funny thing is I'm sitting there, I'm trying to enjoy this with my friend who owns the team, my girlfriend, my friends, and then the phone goes off, and it's something Eric Adam did. So it's not me, it's everybody coming to me. And if people want to know how I live here, today's going to be about 90-something degrees. I don't know what it's like in New York or up north. It's probably snowing, or it was snowed yesterday. It's 90 degrees here. This is a very sunny place. It's very hard to stay depressed when it's sunny. Even when it's cold, it was still 59 degrees with a jacket and you're in shorts or you're going to the gym. It's great to live down here. Your quality of life here is great, whether you agree with the political aspects of what's going on here or not. But mentally speaking, I feel great. And my passion is to help others, because I could just be quiet and wait for this month when people are going to get deposed, and we should start, winding down this whole insanity, this whole little circle that was set forth by Jeremy Ornstein and his kin a few years ago. But I think it's better and bigger, and what's better to leave something for yourself than to help others. I think that's something my father instilled in me and that he did himself, because life was never about yourself. It's about helping others. So that's what we're trying to do here. So if you think we sound negative, it's actually we are pointing to facts and things that would lead to change. You can't, if we sat here and say everything is rosy, the snakes are going to come out and they're going to wrap around your neck and kill you, because that's just the way life is. So you need to be aware of these things. This was something I did in the street also, and I think it's important. But if I am going to say something positive, especially by the New York City Police Department, great job catching that pervert in Staten Island that raped a 5-year-old woman. That was an excellent job, and you barely saw any coverage of it. But the people that were out there and they were looking for this guy, they were messaging me. I collaborated with them on Instagram. I think John, Eric, you guys did too. And they found that guy. That was excellent work, because as you know, in a progressively led city, it's hard to be proactive or do anything. They found the guy with no incidents, nothing. I mean, it could have been a shootout. It could have been all kinds of things that happened. No incident. They brought him in, and now hopefully this person will never see the light of day. This animal, you have to be an animal to commit a crime so egregious. So kudos to Staten Island. Sometimes they aren't the Richmond County Police Department, as they like to call them. They are the NYPD. Kudos to you guys. Great job. And that's what you say. That's good cops. Those are good police officers and detectives and the squad, everyone that was out there. I hope they see this guy gets 100 years in prison. Yeah, there he is. There's the walk out of this animal who rapes a 5-year-old. What kind of a menace to society this is. Look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the
You don't see Eric Adams on this arraignment walk, right? Only with Luigi Mangione. Remember that? Took 30 guys to do that. When look, this is what it looks like. See, those are heroes. You should emulate these people that lock this animal up. Not Eric Adams and his crony crew of Crumbs crew, the Crumbs crew.
No, yeah, absolutely. That was a great job. Protect Our Children New York was the gentleman in the organization that if they're ever looking for any child predators in New York City, particularly in Staten Island, because I think that organization's based out of Staten Island. So yeah, great work on everybody tracking down this animal, and hopefully he spends a long time, if not the rest of his life, in jail. A 5-year-old he raped. I believe it was his new girlfriend's daughter. So, traumatized, scarred this 5-year-old for life. Yeah, he should never see the light of day. Does not deserve to walk amongst us. If he does, it should be like that, handcuffed and surrounded by armed guards. So
about armed guards, he should be in a cell 2x4 with a little slit of a window, and he can stare at that for the rest of his life. That's
my father used to say that people like him just deserve to get buried, and that's it. Like, they don't deserve to walk amongst us. You got to put people like him in the ground. So I'm not. I couldn't really make a strong case on why he should still be there. But
there's no place. I hope
for that guy. These detectives those are people that should put in for an award or get promoted. Not a guy that, remember years ago, the guy that handed shoes to some homeless guy, they probably arrested like right after that. Remember that? They gave that guy a shit. I'm just saying.
That was in Times Square, right?
Yeah.
Boots was his name. Remember Boots? Or
yeah, I think it was like $60 for the boots, right?
Yeah.
$60 to get an award. You know what though, John? I think for people like that, there's just no rehabilitation. One thing that's great about something like this is that even our haters and our trolls, like we all agree, like no one has a place for this guy. Even as I see some of the haters and trolls agree, like there's just no justice. Throw away the key. That's it. There's no coming back.
No. This guy's an animal. This guy, I don't know what the sentence could be other than life in prison with no parole. And I want him. I want that. I want him to be in the smallest cell staring at a little slit. Every day for the rest of his life, he's got to think about what he did and why. And no matter, the only person he's got to pray to is God. And that's the only person that could forgive him for, I don't even know. This crime is so egregious. It makes I'm boiling just thinking about it. But that was a great job. Great job.
Don't do too well in jail.
So
even
Marlon,
you know.
Marlon, before we get out of here, anything you got, brother? Anything you're seeing? Anything you want to talk about?
Yeah. Two things I'm looking at right now. First, I'm looking at the case of Vidat and Seidman, the two detectives from the DOI who, they have the ongoing case. They made allegations against the department. That's something to keep your eyes on because, when me and Sal discussed it, there's a lot of names in there that keep going back to the same issues we've had with this department over the last few years, and I don't think it's coincidental, it just shows you the people who are involved in that big club that we always mention. So that's something to keep your eyes on. And I think as more comes out about the case, you're going to see the ties are going to become even more evident, right? The other thing I have my eyes on. So I'm sure you guys know by now that I'm kind of like obsessed with like the macro view of things. I like to look like I'm really into macroeconomics and looking at how the big picture kind of affects us. It trickles down and affects us, right? So I talk a lot about like the state of commercial real estate in the city and how much the city depends upon the tax revenue that comes out of it. And because of that, I've mentioned before that the real estate developers have an outsized influence on city government, right? And not coincidentally, this is why you see all the corruption kind of like ties back to real estate, right? So I mentioned that because I'm looking at Doge right now and what Musk and what President Trump is doing with the Department of Government Efficiency. And you already see a lot of the progressive politicians are lining up and trying to find ways to fight it. You see lawsuits from Letitia James. You see Ilhan Omar talking about it, AOC talking about it. All the usual progressive voices, right, are all talking about it. And you see the issues caused by the gutting of USAID, and I'm sure you've heard of how USAID funded a lot of progressive measures, a lot of measures that kind of hurt the globe and they hurt the city itself. These are organizations that kind of work against causes that would benefit America in general, right? So I have my eye on that because eventually, as Doge cuts the federal funds here and there and there, it's going to start the people in the city, especially in the progressive side, right? Now, New York City has like a uniparty, okay? So it's not just the progressives, right? But all of these people are eating off of a lot of this money and these federal funds that come trickling down. And those include like the NGOs and the community groups that they'll virtue signal all day, but in reality, how much do those groups actually help the city and those communities, right? So as the money dries up, these organizations are going to have problems because they're either going to go bankrupt or become insolvent. And you're going to start seeing an even greater outcry. you might even start seeing protests, right? Under the ruse that Trump is like on some revenge tour, okay? When in reality, he's just trying to get the waste and fraud out of government. But that is something to keep your eyes on, because that affects the police department as well. And because again, the money, a lot of this money goes to the police foundation too, believe it or not. So you're going to see a lot of outcry from like Adams and members of government to get money to fill the budget, because as the feds take away that money, the budget, you're going to see more gaps in the budget. And I think, right, I'm going out on a limb here, but I think eventually this is going to actually lead us to a new Mullen commission, okay? Because they're going to have to account for a lot of the fraud and waste that's been in Adams' administration. And when you start pulling that thread, you're going to get to other problems, the issues in the police department, like the overtime fraud, like the using of federal funds for the wrong overtime codes, which obfuscate using federal funds for money was never meant for. You're going to start seeing that more and more. And I believe eventually this is going to end at a new Mullen commission at City Council. So I have my eyes on that, and I think things are going to get spicy as the year goes on. So that's what's on my mind.
Absolutely. Eric, you got anything before we get out of here, brother?
Listen, bottom line is I'm seeing an immense amount of corruption in the NYPD. I'm seeing failure on the leadership. I don't see anything better with Jessica Tisch. I speak to cops on a daily basis, including integrity control officers, and the amount of pressure they're getting right now to suppress overtime, the pressure that they're getting now to go out and make arrests, the pressure that they're getting to follow in line, to have their body cameras perfect. To me, it's completely immense. It's misdirected. And my answer is always the same. I say, it's funny. It's funny to put all this pressure on the general population, and yet we don't see any pressure on what's going on in their own house, and that's One Police Plaza. One Police Plaza is where all these problems stem from. That's where all the issues are. That we don't need to be looking at these precincts right now. They're running just fine. We need to be looking at One Police Plaza. So before you want to clean out these precincts, clean out your own house. Clean out One Police Plaza. That's my message. Clean out One Police Plaza. Jessica Tisch, if you're watching this podcast, which I'm sure you are, clean out One Police Plaza before you clean out these precincts, because this is mismessaging. And right now you're only further diving and digging this morale into the toilet, because that's where it's at. Cops every day are asking for advice. What should they do? Where should they go? They're not asking for advice on how to become a better cop within the NYPD. They're asking for advice to how to get out. Can they get out? They're scared. They're timid. They're terrified. But you know what? They got a voice, like Sal Greco said. We're here to support you. If you need it, reach out to any one of us. You can reach out to us through the website, reach out to us through social media. I have no problem. I always give out my personal cell phone. All Cops Are Woke has it. I've had numerous phone calls from the police department threatening messages. I don't care. They're a bunch of cowards, because every time I've ever tried to FaceTime them back, they don't answer. So they're cowards. Don't worry about it. Guys, thank you so much for doing the roundtable on Fridays. This is your finest unfiltered content, week 6. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching. John, close us out, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we got to look at the illustrious Mayor Eric Adams. This is the barometer for how we know New York City safe. This is Eric Adams when he's running for mayor in 2021. This is what he said. Let's listen to him. Is the illustrious mayor up there? Yes, he is. Let's listen to what he said. This is how you know if New York City's safe.
I won't have a security detail. If the city is safe, the mayor shouldn't have a security detail with him. He should be walking the street by himself. I won't have a security detail. If the city is safe, the mayor shouldn't have a security detail with him. He should be walking the street by himself. I won't have a security detail. If the city is safe, the mayor shouldn't have a security detail with him. He should be walking the street by.
So clearly, Eric Adams can't walk the street by himself. His police department, Kaz Daughtry, John Shell, can't walk the street by themselves. They're cowardly. They surround themselves with huge security details. We have cops in Eric Adams' administration that have larger security details than the past mayors. And Eric Adams has the largest security detail of any mayor in New York City history. So clearly, New York City's not safe. I agree with you, Eric. I agree with you. If the city is safe, the mayor shouldn't need a security detail. He should be walking the streets by himself. He said it. I didn't say it. Sal didn't say it. Marlon didn't say it. Eric didn't say it. Eric Adams said it, that he won't have a security detail. And yet, here he is, the largest security detail of any New York City mayor. Listen, it's Friday. We're going to keep rocking out. Have a few interviews next week. I think next week, Wednesday, Mike Smith, right? Detective Mike Smith, retired. Retired. He's going to come on, give us his life, his experiences in the New York City Police Department, his thoughts on what's happening in America currently. And we're going to keep bringing on interesting guests. Looking forward to it. And that's it, people. Thank everybody for joining us. We had about 900 people on here this morning. Please do us a favor, like, share, subscribe, and we will be back at you. Find us Unfiltered.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.